We're on to week 3 now, the not so common Christmas items and animals. So, for day 16, Legaia says we're covering goats, birds, and the Coca-Cola polar bear. Take us away.
Right. I think we should use this as an intro.
Oh, that's quite good. Yeah.
You know what this refers to?
Well, it just looks like the variety of birds.
And it's 12.
Oh, 12 Days of Christmas.
Yes.
Wow. That's
So
cute.
let me upload the lyrics.
For anybody who doesn't know them. I mean, I know our American audience certainly will, but yeah, I suppose around the world they might not know it. There we go. Perfect.
So, first of all, we'll talk about the animals in the Christmas Carol, and I'm sure that everyone has seen the 12 Days of Christmas villain pub edition by now.
Of course. It's just gone out. There's no way they couldn't have seen it by now. If you've made
All
it this
5
far.
jokes. Okay. So, there are a lot of birds. Usually not the last 3. There are different versions. So the last 3 or 4 are usually not birds, and a lot of those are birds that are hidden. For example, the calling birds. That is a dialect term, and it's not calling, it's collie. And collie bird means blackbird, apparently in Western England.
Huh.
And the golden rings are also not rings, so you have 4 days with birds, and then the 5th day, and you think, well, finally, some real presents. But no, the golden rings are pheasants with like a golden collar, a feather collar. So everything is full of birds, and question is, why are they singing so much about birds? Because birds are not really Christmas animals. We've seen Christmas animals, we've seen the traditional ones, and we've seen other ones that help Santa get around. So why are there so many birds?
I guess somebody was obsessed with birds when they wrote this carol.
Yes, that too. So one thing is that birds are connected to winter because some stay and some migrate. So birds can be indicators for the season, which means this would be a seasonal song more so than a Christmas song specifically. And in this song, you have birds that are commonly eaten, and you have birds that are hunted for sport. But you also have garden birds in it, like the collie birds or blackbirds in this one. So it's really not just about birds that are only eaten or birds that are only hunted or you only see in front of your window. Although birds come closer in winter because people are feeding them in front of their windows. So it has been a mystery, and there are some explanations for what this actually means, why this song exists. One is that each of the 12 days of Christmas, which are 12 nights, so those are the rough nights after Christmas, they represent a month of the coming year. So this is part of the Christmas magic that we will be talking about on Friday the 20th. But I'm pulling this up now because there is a lot to talk about on Friday. And in this case, you're trying to predict what the coming year is going to be like. So the partridge stands for January, the turtle doves stand for February, and so on. And those birds represent those months. And you're observing weather along with this carol. So it's not just what they're saying in the carol, but it's also what the weather is like. So when the weather on that day is really tough, then it will be a really, really tough February, for example. And if you see those birds on those days, like if you see a turtle dove on the 2nd day of Christmas, then that is a specific omen.
So this could have double meaning, or maybe triple
Yes.
meaning. This is so,
Right.
but an omen of what? Just that you could have a bad year upcoming or something?
No, but you could have a bad month upcoming, or you
Hmm.
could have specific trouble with a month. So maybe you know these farmers' calendars where they're saying, okay, if April is wet, then this has implications for September, and something is going to happen during the harvest time.
Hmm. Yeah. The
And
farmers are quite smart when
that
it
is
comes to that sort of stuff.
right. I mean, they've observed weather for thousands of years, so they've learned that specific weather conditions in one month have implications for weather conditions in another. That
Yeah.
is one thing that you will sing this song, so you have it in mind, and you have that specific type of bird or that other type of being in mind, and you associate it with the weather on that day. And you also associate it with seeing certain things. So, for example, when you see chimney sweepers. That used to be a sign of good luck.
Hmm.
Or black cats crossing the street was a sign of not so good luck.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Or breaking a mirror, things like that. Yeah, I get you.
Exactly. But for example, seeing a partridge on the first day of Christmas, that would mean something good. So if the bird matches the line in the song, then that is good. Get
Okay.
some French hens now.
Yeah, just make sure you have all these birds for the first 12 days of Christmas.
Or spend these days in a bird sanctuary.
Yeah, that's true. Just spend like 2 weeks in a bird sanctuary. I'm sure they won't have an issue with that.
Yeah, maybe don't camp outside. It's probably a little bit cold.
Or inside. They might definitely throw you out.
Okay, so this is one explanation for these animals because they're not really connected to Christmas itself, and not even in a heathen way. So usually when you have something that is not connected to the biblical stuff, then you have something that is connected to heathen celebrations. But in this case, not even that. The contrary, it's actually related to Catholicism. That is another explanation from 1979. You have a Canadian hymnologist. I didn't know that something like a hymnologist even existed.
So they study hymns.
Yes, but I would say it's probably something like a music professor with a specialization, but I didn't know that there was a specific word for that.
Yeah.
His name is U.D. McKellar, and he published an article that is titled How to Decode the 12 Days of Christmas. And he says this is actually a song with a hidden code in it. He says it comes from the time when England was switching from Catholicism to Protestantism. And suddenly they were banning everything that was related to Catholicism. So this song was used as kind of a catechism song to teach children about the Catholic doctrine in times when Catholicism was illegal in England. Which means that each of those lines would refer to something religious, and we would probably have to read this article from 1979. So if we can find it, that would be a thing. But it's basically religious doctrine and religious rules, and you're packing this into a children's rhyme, and into something for Christmas time, so the evil Protestants don't catch it.
Well, gotta admit, it's pretty clever then.
Yes, and it suggests that the true love in the song, my true love gave to me, that the true love is God, who gives food, fun, and sports, or these religious doctrines. So the true love is God.
That tracks for religious things. Hmm.
Yes, and it's based on a traditional folk melody. So the modern version is based on something that was written in the late 18th century. The newest arrangement that is most commonly played now is from 1909. That was arranged by an English composer named Frederick Austin, but it's much, much older, and it definitely goes back to Tudor times, maybe even further back in time.
Well,
There are different versions. It's not just an English thing, it's also Scottish, and it's called the Yule Days in Scotland. It's not the 12 days of Christmas. And they also have it in France, Sweden, and the Faroe Islands.
how about that?
So I don't know what the religious connotation is in the Faroe Islands, for example, or in Sweden or France. They probably didn't have this problem between Catholics and Protestants. You know, most of the European continent sorted this out in the early 17th century, and after that, everything was sorted out. So there was no problem between the two denominations anymore. And it was not like in England where Protestants persecuted Catholics for a very long time.
Yeah,
So
that was messy. You can thank Henry VIII for that.
because he had to marry a woman who was particularly well endowed.
I'm gonna bear him a male son. Yep.
Yeah, not just that. There are stories that Anne Boleyn had three of something that usually only exists as a pair in women. Her blouse was stuffed.
Wink, wink.
Yes, we can't say this in front of the children. But you know, Henry had a thing for women who had, I would call this mutations, because there is also a story about Jane Seymour that she had 6 fingers on each hand.
Hmm. I mean, hey,
So,
Henry was into it.
to be fair, the Egyptian pharaohs, some of them are also people who are said to have had 6 fingers on each hand. So this could have been seen as something divine.
Yeah, that could very well be the case. Mm-hmm.
Enough of that. That's the birds in the carol, and that's the villains in the villain carol. So we can try to decode that.
Yeah.
But I would say we'll move on to the Yule goat. The Yule goat is the other big animal. So we have 2 smaller entries, the polar bear and the alpacas. The alpacas are not really Christmas animals, but I'll explain why they're in here. And we'll move on to the Yule goat now. And as you know from the stream, it's a giant thing made of straw. They started this in Sweden in 1966. So building this giant goat is not something that goes back to heathen times, but it's a heathen symbol. Just that tall thing, that is something that they only came up with in the 20th century. And this one only goes to 2020. So I can tell you what happened in 2021, 22, and 23. In 21, it was burned down again. In 2020, it survived, made it to Christmas, no problem. And last year, someone made a grave mistake. People used straw that still had some grains in it, and apparently enough grains to be interesting to a flock of jackdaws. So a flock of jackdaws started disassembling the Yule goat.
Oh, I was waiting for somebody to eat it.
They
No.
couldn't completely destroy it, but they damaged it considerably. So as you can see in this picture with the black and white ones, it says behind the white one, Orörd och lät öde, which means it made it to Christmas safely. Uppeldat means it was destroyed, and Ananskada means there was a different kind of damage. So not completely burnt down, but 2023 would be an Ananskada year.
It's crazy that it's gotten burned down so many times, right? It really makes you wonder, like, how secure are they making this? Because if it's clearly a yearly tradition, and the fact that they're able to get to it so many times to burn it is shocking, really.
Yeah, so they've added security throughout the years, and you could imagine that maybe this is fundamentalists, either Christian fundamentalists, who see this as offensive because it's heathen, or what's more likely, to be honest, because we've had a
Kids.
lot of church burnings and stuff. It could be Muslims burning it down, because there have been
Oh.
attacks all across Europe on churches and on religious symbols. I've just seen a video of someone in Lebanon trying to destroy a Christmas tree in public.
Well, yeah, I mean, there could definitely be that as well. I get the feeling there's probably multiple things. I don't feel like whoever's burning it, or at
Yes.
least attempting to burn it every year, is always the same group. It could very well be a variety. And I'm sure even once or twice it was probably even just silly teenagers or, drunken people.
Yes, that could be.
Hmm.
So, this one is Gävle Goat, and Gävle is the village where they build it, and I'll show you the whole thing. First of all, we have a picture of what it looks like when it's burned, because it still has the scaffolding inside.
Oh, yeah.
So you can burn the straw, but probably not the whole thing.
Wow.
In its big form and also in its small form that you can buy at IKEA. Yeah, when it stands. It's a giant thing. As you can see, there are people around it in one picture. There's a little shed behind it. So it's a giant goat with red bands. So why is it a goat? Do you have any idea?
Um, as to why it's like related positively to the Christmas, I'm not sure, but I suppose this is more like tied with the heathen celebrations, like you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, but why would they use a goat for Christmas? For the winter solstice, for Yule? What is the connection? Do you have an idea what it could be?
Off the top of my head, no, because usually goats are associated with Lucifer and things like that, like a far more negative thing. So it wouldn't be that. Um,
No.
does it have anything to do with the nativity scene at all?
No, it's not Christian, it's heathen.
Right, so there's definitely heathen. Yeah, I really don't know. I guess perhaps obviously goats are important in heathen holidays. Maybe does it have anything to do with like maybe goats giving birth around that kind of time of year?
No. No, most animals don't give birth in the dead of winter.
Yeah,
Um,
that does sound a bit silly. I'm not sure.
okay, it's related to Thor, and let me show you a picture. Yay! This is Thor with his chariot.
Huh. I did not know that he had a chariot.
He does, and even funnier and maybe interesting for you is that the goddess Freya also has a chariot, but her chariot is pulled by cats.
That's pretty funny.
Yes, and you can imagine that when you have 10 huskies pulling, then they're all going in the same direction, but 10 cats pulling go in 10 different directions.
You can't hurt him, yeah.
She's never getting anywhere, so she has to hitch a ride with her brother if she wants to get anywhere because her cats are not pulling.
Oh god, it's funny.
Okay, so goats are associated with Thor, and the thing is that in the North Germanic areas, Thor was replaced by Saint Nicholas because both are associated with weather, with traveling, with crops. You remember the grain miracle that Saint Nicholas performed? So there
I
is some
remember that.
overlap.
Day 6.
Right. There is some overlap not only with the Greek god Hermes, but when the belief of Saint Nicholas moved towards Scandinavia, they picked up on certain things that he was responsible for, on his patronages. And they thought, oh, this is neat. He's like Thor, just like a lamer version of Thor.
Yeah, like a non-action Thor, even though he's gone to jail.
So yes, there is a connection, but also the goat is an important animal for all kinds of people back in the days, because Scandinavia is a little bit colder than Central Europe, for example. So farming is not that easy. And what people do is they keep animals because that's more reliable than, for example, growing wheat. So they always have lots of goats around. They have cattle. They have reindeer, for example. and that is a staple. Goats are like the donkey, the poor man's version of a cow. So you don't have a horse because you can't afford it, you get a donkey. You don't have a cow because you can't afford it, you get a goat. Because goats will eat anything and they can survive really bad conditions, which means even if you're super poor, you're probably going to have a goat. So you have something to eat, you have some milk.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
This means that goats will keep you alive during bad times, which is important for the winter solstice, because we're talking about the rough nights, the worst time of the year. So, of course, you would have an invisible goat spirit that monitors the preparations for the festivities. That is a thing.
That's really cool. That makes that makes total sense. Wow.
Yes, so not only Saint Nicholas, not only Thor, but there is this goat spirit that is called the Yule goat, and it's thought to be an invisible goat, and it monitors the festivities, so it makes sure everything is done right, because they believe that there is some sort of divine goat that helps people stay alive in bad times. It's not only connected to winter, but to bad times. So they have they have a divine animal that has an interest in keeping people alive.
That's very nice.
Yes, it's a beautiful thing. So related to that, they would call the straw bundle, the last straw bundle of the harvest of that year, the Yule goat, because the last bucket of grain from the harvest was seen as something magical, and that was saved for the Yule celebrations. So you wouldn't use that to sow the next year, and you wouldn't use it to make flour, to bake bread. You would preserve the last bucket of grain, and you would preserve that last straw bundle because they were magical. And there is a Yule game associated with that. So your last straw bundle, you need to get rid of that, but you need to hide it somewhere, and then they need to get rid of it. So you would take the bundle, you would break into your neighbor's house while they were gone, and then you would hide that bundle in your neighbor's house. And if they find it, they have to pass it on the same way. That is the Yule game. And it's not malicious, so you're not breaking into your neighbor's house to do something bad, but you're trying to give them good luck by passing on the bundle. And you're probably getting bundles from them too.
Yeah, but but that's awesome. It's fun, but yeah, if you've got neighbors and they're gonna pass it to you and you're gonna pass it to them, it's just gonna keep going round and round, isn't it? I mean,
Yes, and somebody's going to get stuck with it, but it's not a problem because if you get stuck with it, that means you're having a lot of good luck.
wow, well, that's a positive way to break into somebody's house.
Yes, and I mean, Santa Claus breaks into people's houses.
That's true. That's true. Under the law, you're right. He's definitely breaking into people's houses.
Once a year, it's legal, and this has implications for Home Alone. So, what are their names? Marv, and what is the other one called? The other burglar?
Oh God. Hang on. I'll get him. I'll get him.
Joe Pesci's burglar. What's he called?
Yeah.
So
Um.
they were not trying to do something bad. They're simply in the spirit of Yule.
Oh, it doesn't tell me their names. It's so silly. Why did it not tell me? It just tells you the actors, but we know the actors. We know their names of the Harry and Marv. There we go. Harry and Marv.
Right.
They're not a Santa Claus though.
No,
They
but
don't get a
it's
freebie.
perfectly legal. They were probably just trying to hide the Yule bundle.
Ah, it was a big misunderstanding. They're heathens, of course,
Yes.
of course. In New York City.
Okay. So yes, there is the Yule bundle, and it's connected to other traditions that we're going to look into. We have some some horror traditions, and there is one from Wales that we're going to look into.
Oh,
So
yes.
in some cases, someone dresses up as a Yule goat. So this is like a normal person in a cloak, but with a goat head, and follows the carol singers and helps them prank people and demand gifts from them. So it's a form of trick or treat.
Wow. Christmas trick or treat.
Yay. This is what they look like.
Ooh.
They are spooky. We'll see more of them because there are different national versions of them across Europe. And they're usually about between 6 and 7 feet tall. So they're very, very tall with these animal heads, which means they're quite spooky to look at.
It's a big goat.
Yeah. And the second one particularly looks like something that comes from the fetish community. But it's too early for Christmas horror, so let's look at the cute Yule goat, or Yule bog, as it is called, associated with Santa. So there you have it.
Aw.
In one case, you even have Father Christmas riding on the Yule goat, and that is actually the English depiction, because he has this wassailing bowl, and that is a bowl with holy cider, mulled cider.
Oh, yeah.
So there is a cute version of the Christmas goat. Um, and this spooky thing that really turned into something that was a lot nicer from the 19th century on, because in the 19th century this shifted and they were not trick and treating anymore, they were not that spooky anymore. They still had the man with a goat head, but the man with the goat head would now bring presents, so that is also an alternative version of Santa.
I
And
see.
the Yule goat moving around with people who sing carols. That is something that you can find in different countries. It's connected to Kolyada that we've looked in. That we've looked into when we were talking about Christmas carols. The Swedish version of Kolyada is known as Yule booking.
Yule booking.
Right. The Gävle goat that we've looked into, it's being constructed right now. They usually do this between December the 1st and December 24th, so they have to finish it until Christmas Eve. This year they started on November 28th, so that is usually when the preparations begin. And I think it takes longer now because they have security around. They're really trying to protect that goat. And IKEA has adopted that goat too, so you can find these goat ornaments, these straw goats, the small ones, at IKEA. Not the big one for the garden, though.
You can't have that one. I might get burned down.
Yeah, probably by a local priest.
Yeah,
So
you
when you
never know,
have
right?
someone who is really really strict and says this is a heathen symbol, it needs to vanish, then you may see a priest sneaking around burning it down.
I'm gonna have to get us a little straw goat ornament. That's great. It's fun. It's just fun.
It is. Third Christmas animal. Why do we have a polar bear as a Christmas animal?
Yeah. So yet again, I think it's just the fact that over the years they've associated Christmas being with the North Pole, and that's like Arctic animals, and a polar bear is one of them. Although I'm surprised that they don't always use like penguins, because I think that's just like
Yes.
bizarre, right? Like, why not? They're adorable, like penguins in the workshop. That'd be hilarious. But yeah, so I think it's just a thing that they associate it with the North Pole, don't they?
That is one thing, but also because Coca-Cola had polar bears in their ads.
Oh yeah, I mean they still like doing that around Christmas time. It's
Right.
popular.
So they have the red American Santa, they have the red Coca-Cola truck, and they have the polar bear drinking Coca-Cola.
Yeah, which don't give bears Coca Cola, okay? Shouldn't have to make that a PSA, but I get the feeling somebody might fucking try it. So I just want to put that out
Specifically not
there.
the polar bear.
We don't endorse that
Right.
shit.
Like, don't don't approach polar bears for any reason. Even if they've
Yeah,
stolen your Coke, don't.
just don't approach bears.
Right. So we're not sponsored by Coca-Cola, but you should write them a letter after this because we've said the word so often now. So they should really give us something for that.
Yeah, not sponsored or affiliated in any way. But hey, if Coca-Cola you want to do business, you can totally email me and we'll talk shop.
Do you have any idea why alpacas may have become Christmas animals?
Um, Not entirely sure, but I get the feeling that's going to be more of the hotter countries just kind of associating maybe how an alpaca looks to Christmas. I'm not entirely sure. It's cute.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, the difference between llamas and alpacas is llamas are the ones that are carrying loads, so they have a similar function to donkeys in the old world. And alpacas are the ones that are kept for making wool because they have high quality wool.
Oh, okay.
So they're kind of the sheep.
Right.
And one thing is that alpaca wool is very, very warm. So for a while, I think it was from the 80s to the early 2000s, there were lots of presents made of alpaca wool, like heating cushions and that kind of stuff that became popular. But that is not the actual reason. The actual reason is that alpacas do something that goats also do. They help you get rid of your Christmas tree when Christmas is over because they eat that stuff.
Ah, recycling. That's useful.
Right. So they are the ecological Christmas animal that gets rid of the dead tree. And that is that episode. We'll continue tomorrow with Not Santa.
Fantastic. That's day 16 down. Thank you so much to my YouTube members and Patreon members for all the love and support. It's thanks to people like you that we can keep growing.